And the fifth is Srivas Thakur, who is actually Narada Muni, the great devotee, because one of the truths is a devotee. So these are the Panchatattva. What temples in the world do they have a Panchatattva in? Does anybody know? Mayapur, where else? Where? Laguna Beach? You know where else? Hawaii and Rome. Maybe some other place. I don't think even at, well, no, they do have the Panchatattva at the Yoga Pit. But, you know, many of the Gaudiya Mats have like you have here, Radha and Krishna and Chaitanya. But we have the whole Panchatattva in Mayapur, and we have the whole Panchatattva in Laguna Beach. That's why when Tukaram gives a talk, he's a much better lecturer than I am. So we're going to turn me off now, and we're going to play a tape of him giving the lecture last night. No, we won't do that. We'll continue from here. So he teaches by his example. And he was setting up in the Navadvip and Mayapur and Shantipur area, which is around the area where Lord Chaitanya would appear and where we have our big temple that's coming up, the temple of the Vedic Planetarium. You've all seen that? Who hasn't heard of the temple of Vedic Planetarium? You haven't heard of it? It's the huge temple that was predicted 500 years ago would come up, and that people would come from all over the world to see it. And you know, 500 years ago, people weren't coming from all over the world to India. The English hadn't even arrived yet. Only the Mughals had taken over. Not the Mongols, the Mughals. The Mongols took it for a while too. They stopped the Mughal invasion, and then when they kind of dispersed, then the Mughals came back. So India had its troubles. So Advaita Acharya appeared in 1434, and he was teaching the science of devotion. And in our disciplic succession, as Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarishi vidu, that this knowledge is imparted in disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. From the great Acharya, Madhavacharya, came a line of people that came then to Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri initiated the worship of Radha and Krishna together, the female and male forms of God together. And he had disciples such as Ishwara Puri, who was the spiritual master of Chaitanya. Chaitanya is the original Krishna himself, and he doesn't need a spiritual master. But just to show us that it's necessary, he takes the spiritual master. So his spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, was initiated by Madhavendra Puri, and so was Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya was initiated by Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri came to the Shantipur Navadvip area to see Advaita Acharya, because it's interesting for him, because he knows that this is the incarnation of Godhead, so he is adoring him, but at the same time, the incarnation of Godhead is adoring him as a self-realized spiritual master. This shows that even God appreciates the self-realized souls. He doesn't say, I'm God, I don't have to pay respect to you. So he was so happy. We may even read some of it later. In our Panchatattva, we have the different things. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the original Krishna himself. Nityananda shows us the ecstatic love of Godhead, and Gadadhar shows us the internal devotion, and Srivas, I wish they would stop with that horn. What is it? What? So what?
Tap.
What's tap? Oh. Wow. Sounds like it's going to blow up. So, Gadadhar teaches the internal devotion, but Advaita teaches us how to practice the regulative principles of devotional service, how to practice sadhana bhakti. Raganuga bhakti is where we're spontaneously in love with Krishna. Who's at that level? Raise your hands. No? So to get to there, we have to practice the rules and regulations. It's just like a child may want to become an airplane designer, But he has to start with the first grade. You can't just jump over all of that and become an airplane designer. You have to start with the basic principles. And Advaita shows us how to practice these basic principles. So even though Lord Chaitanya is the form of Vishnu, and there's different ages of man, in the Satya Yuga, an incarnation of God comes to teach the transcendental meditation where they meditate a long time. In the Treta Yuga, a different incarnation comes to show how to do the Agnihotra Yajna sacrifice, which they do a big sacrifice. And in the Dwarpa Yuga, the Lord comes to show how to do the deity worship like we do. And generally it's a Vishnu incarnation that comes. But one time out of 1,000, which means one time out of 4,320,000,000 years, the original Krishna comes. And when the original Krishna comes, then he comes in this age. The incarnation is yellow in color. The original incarnation comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Usually it's not Chaitanya. Usually it's Gaur Narayan. He comes in the golden form, but he's a Narayan form. And I don't know how Advaita would fit in there because we have two Narayans then. But I don't know how that works out in that age because it's not the age we're in, so it's not for us to deal with. So, Mahavishnu wants the original incarnation of God to come. So what Advaita did is he went down to the Ganges River and he offered water from the Ganges and the Tulsi leaves, because Krishna always likes the Tulsi leaves. Right after the Mangalartik in the morning, we offer our prayers to Tulsi and we go around Tulsi and we ask to be forgiven for our offenses. Who's never made an offense here? I thought I was the only one that made offenses. But we make up for them by continuing in devotional service and worshiping the Tulsi plants and asking Radharani for forgiveness and following in the footsteps of Advaita Acharya. So he was offering these Tulsi leaves and he was offering the Ganges water and he was praying to Krishna, please come in your original form of Godhead to deliver the pure love of God in the mood of Radharani. Because what happens when Lord Chaitanya comes, Krishna wonders how Radha, his female counterpart, can love him so much. So Krishna comes as Chaitanya to teach the holy names, but he also comes to understand how it is that Radharani loves him so much. He comes to taste that nectar of love that Radharani is feeling. He gets the mood of Radharani, and he wants to enjoy the ecstasy of this and teach this to others. So he has internal and external purposes for coming. So because this kind of pure love, where the people have the intimate relationship with Krishna, is being taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because we can't go just straight from the Vaidhi Bhakti to the Raganuga Bhakti. But if we practice Vaidhi Bhakti, we don't go to Krishna, we go to Vaikuntha Loka, where Vishnu is. So Advaita as Vishnu wanted to bring Krishna here to teach this pure kind of love of Godhead. So then what we have to do is follow one of the residents of Vrindavan to enter into this Raganuga Bhakti. But Lord Chaitanya is Krishna with the mood of Radharani. So what better connection to residents of Vrindavan could you get than that? And so we see up here that on this one in the back, I guess it's not exactly a painting, but we see that they are dancing with Lord Chaitanya and they end up there with Radha and Krishna and the gopis in Vrindavan, because this mood of chanting the holy names, kirtan means glorification, and when we chant it for the public it's called sankirtan, or complete glorification. So by this complete glorification we enter into the mood of spontaneous loving devotional service. We did the The Harinama today, where you went down to the center and came back. Did everybody go on that? How many people went? Raise your hand if you went. Wow, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 11. How about that? 11. That's good. And did people notice it? Just by hearing the names, they're purified. Just like people might not know what water is, but if you throw some water on it, they get a good idea, don't they? But we don't do that. We don't walk to the wall and throw water on people. They might not appreciate it. But they appreciated the chanting. We do have a good crowd here today, don't we? We get a big crowd in Laguna because we have the deity of Advaita Acharya there, and not many of the temples have it. But he's so important because in this age, God comes in his original form as Krishna, but he comes as a devotee, as Lord Chaitanya, and he comes in the mood of Radharani. So you get someone who's giving us the process for the age. He also is the original form of Godhead in the male form, but in the mood of the female form. So you get the package of everything confirmed by the bell. You get the package of everything you could want. And this is why Advaita Acharya is praying in the form of Vishnu to ask God to come in his original form. And his prayers are going to be heard a lot more than ours, aren't they? He's Mahavishnu, he's God, but he still wants to see Krishna in the original form. There's a story in the 10th canto that also appears in the Krishna book, how this one man had all of his children would die right at birth. And he was upset with the king, and nobody could protect him. And finally Arjuna says, I'll protect him. I'll stand outside your house with arrows, and when the child is born, sure enough, when the child was born, the child died. And he couldn't protect him. And so Arjuna was perplexed, and he went to Krishna. And Krishna says, I know what's happened. He says, we'll go in the plain, and we will go through the piercings of the universe, and we'll go to where Mahavishnu is. And what happened is that Mahavishnu had taken these children away as soon as they were born and took them to his abode because he wanted Krishna to come there. And Krishna doesn't just go through the coverings of the universe to visit anybody, does he? Even though he's the original form of God, he went to see Mahavishnu in his form. And it was interesting for Arjuna to see the two forms of God talking to each other. It's amazing how this can happen. But so Mahavishnu, being the creator of the universes, and then the Vishnus in each universe create that universe, but he's the creator of the creators. He has the ability to ask God to come in this form. So he was praying like this. And what he would do is that he would offer the tulsi leaves and the flowers in like a leaf cup and put it in the Ganges. And what was interesting is before Krishna was born, his 6 younger brothers were killed, and then Balaram came, and then he came. So what happened was, when he would pray to Krishna with the flowers and the tulsi leaves and the Ganges water, he put the leaf in the Ganges water and it floated upstream. He said, this is a sign that it's going upstream instead of downstream. So he followed it, and it went to where Sachi Mata is. Lord Chaitanya appeared through Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata, and it went right to her feet. You know, in the Vedas it's predicted that the Lord will come and his mother will be the son of Sachi. That's why they call him Sachi Nandan. It went to his feet, and he could see that she was pregnant. So he thought, well, I'll pay my obeisances to see if this is the original divine form of Krishna. So he paid his obeisances to Sachi Devi, and she immediately had a miscarriage. So she says, oh, as soon as you paid your obeisance to me, I had a miscarriage. He says, don't worry. Eventually you'll have the Supreme Personality of Godhead appear as your child. So he would go and offer this again. It happened a second time, and he paid his obeisances. And sure enough, she had a miscarriage again. And the third time, the same thing happened. And the fourth time, the same thing happened. And the fifth and the sixth. And the seventh time, she gave birth to Sankarshan, came as Lord Chaitanya's older brother. And then, the next time she said that Advaita said the original form of Krishna will appear, because each time he put the leaf cup with the flowers and the tulsi leaves and the Ganges water, it would float up to her. And he said, now you will have the original form of Krishna appear in your womb. And you don't worry. So she was pretty ecstatic when she went home to tell her husband that the original form of Krishna would appear as her child next. So we see that Advaita Acharya was so instrumental in bringing this about, that we need Lord Chaitanya in this age to follow the process of chanting the holy names of God, to understand the practice of devotion. These we find in the book Chaitanya Charitamrita, written by Krishnadas Kaviraj, and Vrindavan Das Thakur writes the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and these have the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and the instructions. In there they have the instructions that Lord Chaitanya gave to Sanatana Goswami and the instructions he gave to Rupa Goswami. And from that, Rupa Goswami writes the Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu that Prabhupada translates as the nectar of devotion. So all these things come about, and he shows us the ecstasy of chanting the holy names, worshiping God in separation from God. He shows us this. And this all became possible because Advaita Acharya came and prayed fervently for Krishna to appear. Imagine that. He is praying with all his intensity to have the form of God appear. And he appeared 52 years later, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was only here 48 years. Advaita Acharya was here 125 years. He didn't pass away until like 1559, I think it was. 125 years later. So he was here 52 years before Lord Chaitanya and 25 years after that. And he had 6 sons. 3 of them were good followers, and 3 of them became useless. So some of the people follow the useless ones who teach something different. And this is why we have to stick close to the original teachings that were given by Advaita Acharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Advaita Acharya is, Lord Chaitanya thinks of him as his spiritual master because Advaita Acharya is initiated by his spiritual master. So he's a godbrother, just like the people here who are initiated by my godbrothers appreciate me because I'm a godbrother of their gurus. So it's like I'm an uncle to them. I'm not a real uncle because I don't have any brothers and sisters. I don't think I'll get any now. So the only way I can be an uncle is to be a godbrother to somebody like Parthasarathi Goswami and Giriraj Swami and Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. These are the ones in South Africa. There are a few others, but those are the main 3 right now. Kadamba Kanana Swami and Bhakti True Swami is gone, but we'd say those are the main 5, wouldn't you? Giriraj Swami, Bhakti True Swami, Kadamba Kanana Swami, Parthasarathi Swami, and Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. Are those not the main ones? Madhavi is initiating in Cape Town, but he only has a few disciples. The others have a large amount. They all have more than 1,000 here, I think. And they may have them in other places. How many does Parthasarathi have in South Africa? Do you know? What's the last count? You lost count. How many? Someone have a number? 900. 900. So it's less than 1,000. Does he have them in other countries too? Ukraine. And Bhakti Chaitanya Swami has some in Russia in that area too. They have a big movement there. It must be tough because Russia and Ukraine are fighting, but the devotees still try to get along because it's not their fight. So, Advaita Acharya, he says that he would always try to touch Lord Chaitanya's feet first, but Lord Chaitanya was bigger than him, so he would get down and touch Advaita Acharya's feet first. And he would always adore him so much. And he would always say that I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, a servant of Lord Chaitanya, and a servant of his servants. And sometimes Lord Chaitanya would, being chastised by the spiritual master is considered mercy because they're really looking out for you to chastise you and make you understand some spiritual point that's very strong. So Chaitanya never chastised Advaita Acharya because Advaita Acharya, he considered him like his own guru. So Advaita Acharya says, I have to get chastised him somehow. And we worship God in the personal form. We don't worship the impersonal, all-pervading effulgence, even though it's because it's considered like the sun and the sunlight. The sunlight's important, but not as important as the sun. The sunlight comes from the sun. So the impersonal feature comes from the personal. So Advaita Acharya thought, well, if I start teaching the Yoga Vashishta, we're not supposed to read these are impersonal things. You can look, people are still teaching the yoga. It's by Sadananda Yogindra. Sadananda Yogindra wrote this book, the Yoga Vashishta. So Advaita Acharya started teaching this and let it get back to Lord Chaitanya that he's teaching the impersonalism from the Yoga Vashishta. So Lord Chaitanya went over there in an angry mood and started slapping him. And Sita Thakurani, the wife of Advaita, says, please spare him. He's an old man because he's 52 years older than Chaitanya. So if Chaitanya was 18 at the time or 28, then he had to be 70 or 80. So, and Advaita Acharya is just laughing. And Chaitanya says, why are you laughing? He says, well, I composed this whole idea of teaching the Yoga Vashishta so that you would come and chastise me, just so I could get your mercy. And so he played a trick on him, and he got chastised by Lord Chaitanya. So, because he wanted to be, as he says, I'm just a servant of Lord Chaitanya, a servant of Lord Chaitanya, and a servant of his servants. So if he can be the servant of the servants, we should be. I joke with people and say, I'm just a humble servant. But you're the servant of a servant, so you have to serve me. And that's my humble servant philosophy. Or I say, it's easy for me to remain humble because I just give the credit to the other devotees for making me into the great Vaishnava that I really am. And that keeps me humble. By giving them the credit for making me so great, it keeps me humble. So this is the way our mind thinks. But we should be thinking how we can serve others. I see so many devotees here in South Africa that are so much greater devotees than I am. And that's why I stayed here alone to try to get things started, to make sure that when the next people came, that they had a car and they didn't have a debt of books. They had books that were paid for. If I'd left, they would have owed $15,000 to the book fund, and they would have had to find contacts. And because Prabhupada was concerned that I was here alone, he kept trying to get people to come, and they had trouble getting here. Brahmananda was turned back at the border, and finally, Pushta Krishna was supposed to come. So when they threw me out, I called him, and he came, and I gave him a car and $5,000 worth of books paid for. I gave him one more devotee, Gokulendra, and he brought Janaka Raj with him, and then he had 3 more devotees imported come here to help him. There was Parthasarathi Swami, there was Ramanuja Acharya, and there was Riddhadas. And Riddhadas was originally from South Africa. Parthasarathi was from England, I think, because English people could get a visa easier, but they couldn't throw Riddha out. So then he had a team of 6 people to do things with. And I left them with a car and books that were paid for so that they could use that for their preaching instead of having to find money to pay a debt with. So this was Lord Chaitanya's movement going on. And it was all brought about by the mercy of Advaita Acharya. So Advaita Acharya, well, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas because they weren't appreciating him as a householder. Because in those days you had to take sannyas. It's just like here you have to become a doctorate, just like Shmita Krishna did, and then they appreciate it. He has a doctorate. They listen to him because he's a teacher, right? So then sannyas was the same thing. That's why you all, any sannyasis in the room today? No. Any doctors in the room today? What's that? He's a doctor? He's a doctor. Oh, very nice. What kind of doctor are you? A what? Family physician. Huh. But you're all spiritual doctors to some degree, right? We have the prescriptions in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and we give them out liberally. So, when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, he wanted to go to Vrindavan. But his mother wanted him to go to Jagannath Puri so she could hear about him. Because when you take sannyas, you don't go home to live with your mother. You don't say, I'm going to become a sannyasi and renounce the world and go home and live with my mother. So she wanted him to come to the house of Advaita Acharya, but they had to trick him. So while he was wandering in the area they called Radhadesh, which is really supposed to be called Rastradesh, which is where the Ganges doesn't flow, Nityananda was conspiring to get Chaitanya to come to the house of Advaita Acharya. So he told there were some cowherd boys there. He said to the cowherd boys, he went ahead, he said, when they ask you where Vrindavan is, point to where the direction of where the Ganges River is. So Chaitanya was dancing in ecstasy and wondering, where is Vrindavan? And Nityananda says, well, we'll ask these cowherd boys. The cowherd boy says, oh, it's down that way. So they get down that way and they find the Ganges River. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thinks, oh, it's the Yamuna River, so he starts offering prayers to the Yamuna. And then all of a sudden, Advaita Acharya comes in a boat. And Lord Chaitanya has jumped in the water, and he says, I brought a change of clothing for you. And Chaitanya's in wonderment about the whole situation. Because even though he's God, to experience the ecstasy, he lets himself be in wonderment about it. Just like Krishna's God, but he can let himself be as scared of Mother Yasoda chasing him with a stick just to feel that kind of feeling, right? So he's a bit perplexed, and he says to Advaita, what are you doing here? He says, this can't be Vrindavan because you're here. This can't be the Yamuna River. It has to be the Ganges. Nityananda is telling me lies. And Advaita Acharya says, no, these aren't lies. He says, you change into the fresh clothing because the Yamuna River joins with the Ganges River in Allahabad, and the Jamuna River is flowing on the west bank, and the Ganges is on the east bank. So we're on the west bank, so this is the Jamuna River here. And so he says he's not lying. He says, get in the boat and you come to my house, and we will have a small meal, just a few palmfuls of rice. And they get to the house of Advaita Acharya, and he's put out these one big metal plate for Krishna and two big, huge leaf plates that each came from a banana tree that carried like 16 bunches or more. And they put those two out for Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. And then he had preparations such as there was a salad with spinach and ginger in it. There was rice cakes that were soaked in condensed milk. There was dal cakes with cream on them. And there was 100 kinds of vegetables in like leaf pots. They made pots out of banana leaves. And there was rice that they had ghee made from cow's milk that was golden put inside the rice. And there was coconut pulp that was soaked in condensed milk and had rock candy inside it. You know, you take molasses and it sugar cane to molasses, molasses to sugar, and sugar turns to the rock candy. So it's the most sweet, right? And that was mixed with the coconut pulp and the condensed milk. And then he had, there was things like nimba leaves fried with patola flowers. There was banana leaves with yellow squash that was boiled in milk, and there was some other kinds of vegetable preparations. There was fried ones, and there was ones that were cooked in milk, and ones that were cooked in water, and there was so many different kinds of cakes. And Advaita Acharya would put out a bunch of vegetables on the leaf plate, and Chaitanya would eat half of one preparation and move to the next. And each time he ate half, Advaita Acharya would refill that half. So it was never like going down. He'd eat half of one vegetable and move to the next, and Lord Chaitanya would refill that. So he'd eat half of the next vegetable, and Advaita would refill that. And then he'd eat half of the next vegetable, and Advaita would fill that. And they were eating a huge quantity of food. But Nityananda, in his ecstasy, says, I've been fasting for 3 days, and you couldn't possibly have enough for us to eat here. So he grabbed some rice and threw it on Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya, he calls himself like a Smarta Brahman, someone who practices all the rules and regulations, because he shows us how to practice all the rules and regulations. And Nityananda shows us how to develop spontaneous love. So he throws this rice on Advaita Acharya, and Advaita Acharya is dancing in ecstasy, having been touched by this rice, because he knows that he says, now you've become a transcendental madman, and you're going to turn me into a madman also. So he kept refilling all the different kinds of vegetables that they were eating, and they ate a huge amount. And then he prepared 2 beds for the 2 of them to take rest. And this is the story, and he got to see his mother, Sachi Devi, for one last time before he went to Jagannath Puri. And Advaita Acharya stayed in the Navadvip area to continue the preaching there, and he stayed on even after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left this world. And so to establish our regulative principles and establish our movement, he's very important, because he came 52 years before Lord Chaitanya and was preaching and practicing devotional principles in Navadvip and Shantipur. And then he fervently prayed and brought Lord Chaitanya to come to this world. And after Lord Chaitanya left, he continued preaching and practicing that for all of our benefits. So I think it should be about time for Artik now. Is it?
Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
I'll ask questions of them then. What year did Advaita Acharya appear? What?
40.
Not 1834. 1434. Who was Advaita Acharya? Mahavishnu. Is Mahavishnu the big guy? Is that as big as you can get?
No.
When they say God is smaller than the smallest, he enters into the atom. But when he's bigger than the biggest, is that Mahavishnu? It is. And why is he called Acharya?
Teaches by example.
He teaches us by example. So we should follow his example and perform the Sankirtan. You always see the pictures of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda and Advaita doing the Sankirtan together. You see up here, is Advaita in that picture? Where? Where?
One above the Tulsi Asam.
Oh, yes, the one above the Tulsi Asan.
So let us thank Kshudi Prabhu for a very wonderful presentation. And that presentation may have whet your appetite, since you just hang on if you're fasting till 1 o'clock. Just got another half an hour to go.
Definitely whetted the appetite. They won't have that many preparations though.
Jai Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki Jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki. Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Hari ki. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Advaita Acharya Maha Mahotsav ki jai. Hare Krishna. You may come forward, closer to the altar.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Nash Prabhu, are you around?
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Viveshesha Shunyavadi Pashyachare Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama,